What's going on, y'all? Today we are going to be talking about waterfront / lakefront. All you need to know, all you need to consider. It's going to be a good time. I'm really looking forward to it. Let's dive in.
Okay, ready to go? Wait, did you already do the intro?
No.
How's it going, friends? My name is Jesse Lynch and I run the hardest working real estate team in the game. We're called To The Twin Cities. You can check out our website, tothetwincities.com, but this YouTube channel, it's all about helping you find a place to call home here in the Twin Cities, or help you find the right buyer for your home in the Twin Cities. Relocations, really home finding, spot finding, and the best listing videos, the best presentation of any house in the game. That's what we do. That's what we do better than anybody else. So if you're into that, subscribe to the channel, click the bell to get notified so you can see when we put these videos out. And if you wouldn't mind, give this video a thumbs up, say what's up to Nick in the comments below. I don't know, give some opinions on what we're talking about. Maybe we missed some things on this, but would appreciate some comments indeed. And if you want to work with us, get a hold of us. You can reach out to us via our website, tothetwincities.com. We have a contact form there that you can fill out in like 30 seconds or less, or you can shoot us an email directly to info@tothetwincities.com, or you can email Nick directly at nick@tothetwincities.com, or info@tothetwincities.com. Attention, Nick. I'll make sure that gets to Nick. However you want to do it, it'll all lead to working with us, and I promise nobody will work harder for you than we will. So let's dive in. No pun intended.
Oh.
Wow, that's the first time that's actually worked like that. I say that a lot. We're talking waterfront, riverfront, lakefront, and really that is like the Minnesota dream.
Lake life, baby.
That's what people
It's
like.
part of the MO.
They so imagine that. Not everybody can afford to make it happen, and so they're realistic about it. But some people, that's what they want. And honestly, when we talk about it, we're like, there's such a variety of what that means, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to break that down. What are the varieties of lakefront? And maybe that's a good spot to start. But we're also going to have a bunch of stuff that almost certainly y'all have not considered.
Yeah, definitely.
Stuff that we didn't consider until we started doing this. So let's talk about the different water access types.
All right, so with that, the first thing that we're going to cover is kind of some differentiation into the two main types of waterfront that we have determined there are, which is private ownership to the shoreline and or waterfront, and more of a deeded access. You have the usage of, but your property is not necessarily right on the water line.
The private option is a little more obvious, and it's a little more like iconic. It's like what people imagine. It's your home probably backs up to a lake. You have some sort of shoreline. The more the merrier, right? More is better. More is more valuable to a lot of people. And there's all sorts of varieties of that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And there's obviously all sorts of types of lakes and water actual frontage. But that is kind of like, that's what people want. That's the most valuable waterfront property you could get. A relatively flat or slowly sloped yard goes to a lake. You probably have beach or, sandy access. That's probably like, that's what people want,
Top dollar.
Yeah, that's the nicest option that you could get. And then, we'll talk about all these other different varieties of that. But then there's the other option, which is you own a home. It doesn't have direct access, built into the property. You don't own the shoreline per se, but you may have some kind of access to it.
Yeah, more like a deeded access where you can access a marina, which would be kind of the creme de la creme, the premium, a private marina. Your boat is slipped there. It might even have its own lift.
Gas.
Gas, fuel is accessible there. It might have some type of clubhouse or restaurant type of thing. Oftentimes you'll see perhaps a gated dock I know especially in the likes of Excelsior, right in the port of Excelsior, they have stuff like that for some of the homeowners nearby.
I almost think of that as like a country club, but for lakes.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
Yeah, like you don't own the whole golf course. That'd be
Right.
wild. And maybe you don't live on a hole, you know, like with actual frontage to the golf course. But you're part of that country club. You're bought into it, and so you have access to it.
It's as close to the highest degree of autonomy and benefits that you get with the private ownership.
Definitely.
Well, it is private ownership, but of a different.
Not actual shoreline ownership.
No shoreline. Yeah, that's right. All right, so the next step down, so to speak, between the marina and the next would be a smaller but still private, maybe like a community dock with maybe anywhere from 3 to 15 or 20 arbitrary numbers slips where the neighbors all share. You've got one main access and then it branches off, and you've got all these private slips without all the trappings of like an actual marina and staff and fuel and all that other stuff.
And sometimes you'll see that where it's, maybe the home has even a lake view or water view, but like the approach to the water is crazy or treacherous or something like that. So then they'll be like, all right, we have the lake view, but we now, instead of all having our own docks, we all agree to maintain this one dock and all that. So
yes, which I've seen personally. I grew up nearby Lotus Lake over in Chanhassen. I've seen things like that also on Lake Minnetonka. Very common. The next step down from that would be certain lakes of varying sizes. Typically you'll see it on smaller and mid-sized lakes, but there are some larger lakes that are not actually accessible to the public at all. Those oftentimes will have a private boat launch even, and then that would tie into homeowners having their own private docks. But sometimes if you can get lucky, you can find a lake that's not accessible to the public. And then one more step down, I've seen associations like this in Chanhassen and Alexandria. They're very common, where you'll have like a private sandy beach, maybe with some kayak racks, some paddle boats, stuff like that, but there is no docks for a boat or a launch or anything like that. Still a nice amenity, but it's not quite waterfront as we're describing it. But
not
it
as
is an
premium.
option. No.
Yeah, and maybe there is also a public launch, but then it's like, all right, then what's the difference of just living in the area? Well, you have access to this one particular beach or something like that.
Yeah, so a higher degree of privacy versus a public beach, but still not quite a boat launch area. And the last option, a little less common, but we do see it, would be a smaller lake that just has a private beach with no public or private launch. A lot of times that has to do with the size of the lake. So yeah, that's less common, but it is still an option.
Yeah, and still, it's cool, but it's not like necessarily what people are dreaming about when it comes to owning lakefront or having, lakefront property. So even though, that direct private lake access with the shoreline, even though that is the creme de la creme, the Cadillac, which is now like an old term, whatever, the Aston Martin, I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
The Bugatti.
Yeah, Bugatti.
Even though that is like, that is really like the thing. There are some pros and cons to both sides, right? That direct access, while on the one hand, it's very, very cool, it's not without some cons. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then again, we have a whole bunch more thoughts of things to consider. But first, this seems like the first crossroad that people come to, right? When they're talking to us, they're like, I want lakefront. It's like, okay, what are we talking exactly? And so first, con, because I think most people aren't thinking cons when it comes to that direct access. First con, probably obvious, it's more expensive.
Very much so.
And then the next piece to the more negative aspects of the Cadillac is maintenance, right? It's on you. If you own the shoreline, then you have to have your own dock. If you want a dock, then you have to have your own dock, and maintenance of that dock is up to you, right? And so it's more hands-on, but it's also more private, which we'll talk about.
Also, with the maintenance is the water itself. You are responsible for raking the shoreline if you want to get rid of any weed cover that's there. I know that I believe certain cities will hire out private entities to bring around boats specifically to remove milfoil and stuff like that, but when you're right up on your shoreline, that might be up to you to kind of remove any floating debris or take out any weed cover that you'd like.
Yeah. So it's just more on you, right? Like it's your problem, and that's it. I think speaking of your problem, easements, right? Easements from the city or from your neighbors. It's possible that you inherit some easement that 4 owners ago made with 4 owners ago, right? And maybe they were cool. But maybe 4 owners down the road, this other person isn't that cool, right? And maybe they don't respect your stuff as much as you'd want, or they don't respect the easement, or maybe their easement looks like crap, right? And you're just like, that would be frustrating, especially if you had some immaculate lakefront property, and then
which kind of ties into the access. Certain they can intertwine at times due to these easements.
Yeah. So if that could be a con, but if there's no easement, then obviously that's not a con.
Some other cons might be restrictions regarding lawn care, specifically as it relates to chemical usage and stuff like that, which will obviously run off into the lake. I know that nitrogen causes algae blooms, and a lot of that is derived from fertilizer usage. Also, depending on your proximity to the lakefront and the pitch as well, the house might not be able to be built with a basement, and that also ties into the water table, the soil type, stuff like that. So it's just something that might come up as a potential drawback. Lastly, building codes are likely to be more strict, just being positioned close to the water. You might have to have deeper foundations. Anything that might pop up within that realm might just be a little bit more strict than away from the waterfront.
Yeah, and then so as pros, I think the pros are pretty obvious as far as the direct access, the shoreline situation goes. Autonomy, right? I mean, you can't do whatever you want because there's still a shared body of water there, but you have much more autonomy to do to store your things on shore and whatever. Maybe build a shed, dock. How you want to make a dock, you can make the dock. Probably within the law. You have direct access to the water, which I think, let's not understate that. That is so much of what the vision is, right?
Yeah.
I walk out my back door, I hop in the lake, maybe I have a sauna on my property, and it's in the winter. I love the idea of getting in the sauna, jumping in a freezing cold lake. Well, you're going to have to, it's not going to work with a marina, unless they have a sauna.
Plus, there's the added potential, if you're right on the water, to have a boathouse where you can store all these things. I've seen folks even have like a track system that goes into the water where they literally just store their boats, jet skis, whatever it might be, in a shed, and it goes directly in and out of the water, where the floor of the boathouse is like not even there.
Yeah.
It's just the water itself type situation. So you can obviously build that, whereas not having direct access, you'd have to store your boat somewhere.
Yep, and then think about like not just the property itself, but let's say you have a very cool boat, right? At a marina, the likelihood of that being messed with is higher. If you're at a really nice marina with security and all that stuff, it probably goes down quite a bit.
Yeah.
But it's not a non-issue. Not that it would be impossible for that to happen if you had private lakeshore, but it's probably a lot lower. It's like if you had to park your car in a garage versus in your own garage, likelihood of that getting messed with goes down dramatically. All that is to say, you have like a higher level of private enjoyment, a little bit more exclusive, just feels, more elevated, right? A more elevated experience as it pertains to your lake, which actually brings me to I'm kind of a freak about views. I love a good view. You've probably heard me talk about it in videos if you've been on this channel for any amount of time. I love getting up to somewhere where there's like a vista where you can see for a long time. I don't know what it is. It's something I've always enjoyed. So to be able to be on that lakefront with that view, look out your back door or your front, whatever, however it happens to be situated, and just get, panoramic views of the lake. So cool, all different seasons, different, waterfowl, different, just, life happening. I really, really enjoy that.
And of course, the flip side of the price point, as far as private being the most expensive, your resale is going to be typically much higher, as it's the most highly sought after because of these things that we've been talking about. And it's one of those things where they're not making any more lakefront.
Yeah, supply and demand.
Yeah, 100%. So
quite simply. Yeah. Yeah. So then let's go into the pros and cons of the more, access, the, not public access, but it's you don't have the shoreline. We'll start with the pros on that one. To me, the big one is no maintenance or much more minimized maintenance. If you have a marina, if you have some agreed upon dock situation or some HOA maintained boat launch or beach, that's not on you, right? Like the other one, it is your problem. This one, it isn't your problem.
Or at least you're paying for it to be somebody else's problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which, there is value in that.
Yeah, definitely.
for sure.
Okay, so one of the biggest pros of having access to the lake without being right on the water is going to be typically property taxes are considerably lower.
Yeah.
They might still be high because you are paying for that deeded access, but property taxes with lakefront or waterfront homes in Minnesota is definitely very high. Sometimes even getting well into the 5 figures. So you definitely pay for that. Mm-hmm. So you can get the benefit of that with at least a lesser property tax bill that's maybe a bit less painful.
Yeah, and honestly, it's probably somewhere around double.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say so.
Yeah, which is,
depending on your lake. I know Minnetonka specifically, I've seen some property tax bills there that I've sprouted some grays. Reading those, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Remodel a kitchen for that.
Yeah. But, it's like, we understand that, like, that is money well spent to, if that is the priority to you, if having that lakefront and that direct access, I mean, yeah, it's the cost of doing business, and if you can make it happen, it's super well worth it. And again, they're not making more of it, so it's not like such and such company is going to make a version of Lake Minnetonka at a discount.
Not likely.
Well, cheaper taxes here. It's like, it's not going to happen. So. Yeah, for sure. That, and then I think also, you could still get the views, right? Mm-hmm. So there are some where it's like you don't have direct access because of how the lot is situated. Sometimes there's maybe a road in between.
Oftentimes a frontage road or even just a neighborhood street.
Yeah. And so, if your property, it doesn't have the direct frontage, you can have those lower taxes and less maintenance, but still have the benefit of the panoramic view or partial panoramic.
Well, depending on the the undulation of the landscape, big word, wow. You might actually, if you're across the street and it's sloping down, you still might actually get a pretty killer view and not be obstructed by your neighbors if you're situated up a little bit higher.
True.
So that's a possibility.
Yeah.
So you could have better views.
Yeah.
Maybe.
True. Yeah, that's entirely possible. Yeah, okay. But then first con, it's kind of funny that we say this, but it is that the views probably won't be as good.
In most cases.
If at all, right? Mm-hmm. There's a chance that you have all this water access, but no water view at all. Mm-hmm. So, if the view is important to you, like it is to me, then you would have to be making sure that you have the view and the access as well.
Very dependent on the landscape and your surroundings, like we've kind of just discussed, but most times a little bit less. Speaking of less, resale is obviously going to be a little bit less of a premium. I mean, people still like to have that access, and even really proximity to water, people can like because they can access some of these public spaces that we've discussed are oftentimes nearby. But on the whole, resale is going to be a bit less.
Yeah.
Well, considerably less in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I mean, for sure.
You could have 600K across the frontage road, and then on the lake, be pushing 1.2 well into the millions.
Yeah, and then another negative to that version of things is you just have less autonomy, right? Where you have the privacy, you could walk out in a towel. I don't know if you could walk out in a towel, but you could walk out of a sauna into the lake if you have the private shoreline. This situation, you have just way less autonomy to do as you please, right? And you're a little more bound to like, all right, I gotta either walk down the street, hop in a car, something like that.
Go across the road.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And, you gotta deal with your neighbors. I'm just kidding. That shouldn't be a negative, but some people might think it is. And there's also an HOA involved.
In many
probably,
cases.
yeah.
In many cases. Yeah.
At which point, then you really got to deal with your neighbors, and you also have to small, fundamentally governmental meetings for the HOA.
And you'll be required to pitch in on any maintenance and stuff. But I mean, par for the course as far as HOAs are concerned, water or otherwise.
Yeah, but if your HOA is like, no, what we're going to do is we're going to make this dock that does this crazy thing, and you're like, that seems absurd to me, then, well,
majority rules.
You might get outvoted. Yeah.
So just to wrap that up, your two main are going to be private with the shorefront, highest degree of autonomy, solitude, creme de la creme, versus more of a shared, still awesome, but shared, kind of more of a public type situation.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's basically the two biggest things. That seems to be the first, fork in the road for people when they're considering this stuff. And then now we have a whole bunch of other things to consider if this is something that you're sort of pining after. And then kind of the next question is, does it have to be lake? Could it be river? Could it be creek? Like really, what are you, and also...
Wetlands?
Yeah, do you want it to be recreational, or... is that not important? Do you just want the natural beauty, or do you want, to be able to go out there,
enjoy the water?
Yeah, exactly. From not just an aesthetic aspect.
Yeah. Let's talk lake versus river. Most of the time when we talk with folks about waterfront, lakefront, is going to be a lake. You're kind of what we've been describing. Private lakefront, I can put a dock in. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. I can launch a boat, go paddleboarding, go fishing. On the other hand, you have river, which is kind of overlooked sometimes because there are some really killer riverfront properties. Stillwater, Champlin, all over these different places in the metro that still I think would fit the bill for a lot of people.
Yeah, and honestly, there's creek, there's small river that you could fish in and maybe canoe in, and then there's a few rivers that you could put a boat in, you know. And really that's limited to the Mississippi, the Minnesota, although you don't see much of that. I'm sure there are parts where you could.
Yeah.
And then the St. Croix. Personally, I think the St. Croix is the prettiest of all of them.
Yeah, darker waters.
Yeah, and it's just beautiful, like bluff natural areas by Stillwater and Hastings and all that. It's really pretty. It's my brother's favorite place to boat and fish and stuff like that.
When I was growing up, actually, we used to go, my family and I, in the fall, kind of around this time of the year, actually, on the St. Croix, and we would go to where the two rivers meet.
Yeah.
And you can actually see the different colors. The Mississippi's a little bit more of a sandy, kind of I hate to say murky, muddy. Then the St. Croix is kind of just a beautiful, like, very, very deep blue. Yeah. It's very cool to see where they meet.
Yeah, and there's actually, you can actually look at satellite views of it. It's interesting. Down by like Red Wing, Lake Pepin, it's all river, even though I just said Lake Pepin. It is Mississippi, but the boating is very much a thing there. It gets pretty dang wide there, pretty deep.
Pepin's a dammed up part of the river down there. Some really great fishing for all of our potential fishermen and women out there. It's great.
Yeah, but it's not really in the metro. Red Wing is probably an hour from downtown, something like that.
Probably a little more than that.
Yeah, beautiful area, but not. Most folks who are thinking about moving to the Twin Cities, they're not going there. It's a little too far out.
We banter about Hastings, and Red Wing is definitely further.
Definitely
hour
further.
15.
Yeah.
It's a killer drive-in, though. Beautiful city.
Beautiful, great place to go for a car ride, a motorcycle ride, something like that. Mm-hmm. Definitely recommend it, especially in the fall. Very cool.
Totally.
But yeah, so Mississippi, Minnesota, kind of, and St. Croix. And then everything else would be more recreational in the sense of a canoe, a kayak, tubing, like the Cannon River.
Fly fishing.
Apple River, fly fishing, which...
Especially in southeastern Minnesota, fly fishing is pretty killer down there.
Big shout out to the driftless area. If you have not heard me talk about the driftless area, I don't talk about it that much on this channel because it's... The best part is in Wisconsin.
And northeastern Iowa as well.
Yeah, but it's a beautiful area, a really easy like weekend trip. I definitely have quite a few friends who go down there to fly fish. Special shout out Jonathan, dude's obsessed. If you ever need a fishing guide, hit me up. I got a guy for you. If I ever get that email, I'll be stoked. But yeah, so lake versus river, and then sort of like what are the pros and cons? I would say the biggest thing about the river is that it's moving. It's more dangerous.
It is more dangerous.
More volatile.
Yes.
More likely that you'll have a flood.
Prone to flooding, especially in the areas like I mentioned, Champlin, where we shot our Champlin video, the park there, the pitch of the river is quite low.
Yeah.
One of the few places actually where you might actually have to carry flood insurance because many of the river valleys are quite steep.
Yeah, there's a little bit in Coon Rapids and a little bit over by Champlin, kind of that section of the river. Yeah, actually, I own a cabin in Mora, Minnesota. It's like 90 minutes north of where we are right now and basically downtown. We don't have to carry flood insurance, but this spring I was like, maybe we should be carrying flood insurance.
We had some pretty gnarly flooding this spring.
Oh man, it also went from freezing temps to 80. It was like one of the biggest swings that we've had. Of course, the first year that I've owned this cabin, very scary. But it came pretty dang close to the house. There was still quite a few vertical feet for it to go, but yeah, it was nerve-wracking for sure.
Less so with lakes.
Yeah, lakes
extremely rare.
Unless it's a dammed up lake like Pepin or something like that, where it's actually a river turned into a lake.
Yeah.
Then I've never heard of that happening to anybody.
Even houses in Minneapolis and certain other surrounding suburbs that are right on Minnehaha.
Yeah.
I've never seen one like right on the creek that has flood insurance.
Nah.
It's something to consider, which is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Not super common.
Things to consider.
One last thing to consider as well, rivers are typically going to have a little bit more diversity as it relates to the wildlife and the fish. I know that I've fished in Lake Pepin. You can catch sauger and saugeye, which are delicious cousins of the walleye. There's sheephead in there. There's white sturgeon, gar, all these types of really old, almost prehistoric fish that you're not going to find in lakes. Very large catfish.
Other than like Lake Superior.
Yeah. Lake Superior is kind of a misnomer.
Yeah.
But also, I don't think it's ever been recorded in Minnesota, but we were joking earlier that bull sharks have been found up as far as Iowa. Not something that you're going to run into frequently, but it's something to consider.
I guess, you never know. And you'll also see more interesting birds too by rivers. Typically, migratory patterns tend to follow rivers. I was just shooting in Prior Lake today, and man, it's just like an endless flow of birds.
Yeah,
it was crazy. Like I watched for 2 minutes and just an endless, there's just a stream of birds flying down south. But it's all, I don't know, it's all cool. So another thing to consider about, specifically. Most of this is going to be talking about the private shoreline ownership, right? Because this is kind of where it gets to like, again, that's not all created equally.
No,
right?
Certainly not.
Yeah, maybe you have shoreline, but is it usable shoreline? For one, is it a marsh? Is it a wetland that's like considered waterfront? All right, well that's very different than having Minnetonka shoreline.
Yes, and not to disparage our colleagues, but we have seen embellishment as it relates to waterfront.
Yeah.
So you never know until you look at the photos or even go out to the property itself. But we've got a lot of lakes in Minnesota that are a bit of a reach.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
always like to look into that.
I get big puddles in my backyard when it rains. I don't call that waterfront,
Lake Chipotle, shout out.
Yeah.
Hennepin Avenue.
Google that if you haven't, by the way. That's pretty funny. Lake Chipotle in Uptown. It's actually on Google Maps. It's delightful.
That's funny.
Yeah. So as it pertains to, is it a marsh? Is it like a swamp? Is it a small pond? The stagnant water, in my opinion, less desirable. Maybe beautiful. You might get some cool birds and such in an area like that. There's some wetlands close to my house where there's like, I actually don't even know what it is, but there's a bird that's like one of its only habitats in Minnesota, kind of over by Cedar Lake. Super cool.
See a lot of herons and cranes over in wetlands.
Yeah. And so that can be very cool. That can be a very interesting part of like, having marshland,
more aesthetic
property. Yeah, it's more about the beauty and the view, which again I'm a fan of. But then you lose maybe not all of it, most of the recreational nature of things. Something that comes with that, with the more stagnant, still, marshy, swampy water, is mosquitoes.
The state bird.
Woo, yeah. Like it's. In general, mosquitoes are not as bad in the cities as they are further north because there's more treatment, more, folks and governments and things trying to treat them and deal with them,
bomb them, really.
mitigate them,
Yeah.
and stop them from breeding in the first place, which is hard to do when you're the land of 10,000 lakes and there's just water all over the place.
Yeah.
It's part of what makes it great, but it does come with mosquitoes, and so if
no matter what,
yeah,
marsh, lake, river, you're gonna have more bugs.
Yeah,
not even just mosquitoes.
Yeah, even just like a forest.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
You'll have more, but you know, moving water, you're much less likely to have as many mosquitoes by you know, a lake that has like a current. Lake Superior, nobody would be like, oh yeah, it's a lot of mosquitoes there.
Yeah, or
it's
at least the lake is large enough to get some good wind moving over it.
Yeah,
just to kind of swirl it around a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you know, that's something to keep in mind. What is the actual water type? You know, and what do you need out of it? You know, again, if you're not going to put a boat in the water, then all right, you can probably get it more affordable on something like that and have some of that aesthetic value. But yeah, the resale of that's going to be pretty much always lower than the more, you know, super recreational lakes. And then when it comes to just the more standard lakes that aren't marshy, can it be swam in, right? Is there any kind of invasive whatever that's making it not that usable? Not every lake is going to be as swimmable as every other lake. There is some nuance to that. A lot of lakes are going to be dealing with some kind of, you know, algae growth and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, some are worse than others. Some are more of an issue than others. And those can cause, it's not just that it's unsightly, it's that it can cause issues for people.
Typically the larger the better, and yeah, those, especially green algae or blue-green I think it is very, very toxic for dogs.
Yeah.
So for all of our pet owners out there, something to be mindful of as well. And if I hadn't mentioned already, typically the larger the lake, the better as far as that kind of thing being less of an issue. It's more with the standing, smaller bodies of water.
Yeah.
So yeah. Another thing to consider is the actual kind of topography of the lot and the shoreline. I know that, again, referencing the lake that I grew up nearby, Lotus Lake, the western side was quite steep, and I know that's the case with a lot of lakes. So hopefully you can get at least a little bit of a yard or some type of space at the bottom of that, but it is common to find somewhat of an elevator or like a lift where you have to take that from the house down to where the boat is housed or your shoreline is located.
Yeah.
With that, some shorelines are more weedy, rocky, some are sandy bottom, some are more muddy and mucky. These are all things that a lot of times listing agents do their best to add these things. A lot of that information can be found on the DNR website and stuff like that, but not all shoreline is created equal is kind of the takeaway there.
Yeah, and even if, you know, the DNR website that says that overall this lake has a rocky bottom, does the actual shoreline of that property? Not necessarily. Again, I use Lake Superior as because it's kind of the most extreme version of it, but the North Shore and the South Shore are dramatically different shores. One is sandy, beachy, still freezing cold, and the other is rocks and cliffs.
Sheer cliffs.
Yeah, and not quite as swimmable, although there is some very cool spots that are worth going to, but that's for a different video.
And just touching on, I know we already talked about wildlife and stuff like that. I know that certain species are protected as well, so being mindful of their nesting habits, their habitat. I know that even like water lilies that sprout from lily pads, you're not allowed to remove those or cut them down. So there's just more to be mindful of when you actually, you know, are right on the waterfront.
Yeah. And then I think one very underestimated aspect of owning lakefront, a lot of people they're like, I'm going to put a speedboat in there. It's going to be so sick. And you're like, yeah, as long as you can.
Long as you can.
Not every lake is going to allow that. For example, in Minneapolis, there's tons of lakes, 10 lakes. None of them allow like motorized boats.
I think in the chain of lakes in the city, Nokomis, Isles, you know, Beta Makaska, I think all those have 10 horse limits. So it's like a glorified trolling motor. You could, on the back of a small boat, put a 9.9 horse. They do make those. Interesting. The whole point of that is that the lake is not quite large, and I think they're not trying to disrupt natural animal habitats, and they're trying to preserve the shoreline from erosion.
Yeah, and
that's the big thing.
And I think the enjoyment of it. I live right by those. I've never seen a motorized boat.
A lot of people doing sailing, paddleboarding, kayaking, so they don't want a ton of wake, disturbing that, and again, just in preservation of the shoreline.
Yeah.
I know Beta Makaska, the southwest shore, they've had erosion problems.
Yeah.
over the last decade.
I think I would not be surprised if in that area, again, not that there's actually no direct shorefront on Bodemakaska, right? There is a little bit direct shorefront on Cedar Lake in those chain of lakes, but that's the only lake that has direct access. Shouts out to the early Minneapolis people who decided to make that public. I think it's like one of the coolest moves that happened in the history of Minneapolis. But to the extent that I've ever seen a motorized boat in Bodemakaska, I believe was for like somebody training young sailors.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, again, it's like a trolling motor or like a 10-horse.
Yeah, it's
in
like
case it's a still day or if they're in a pinch and they need to get some power.
Yep, but yeah, that's it. I have seen sailboats absolutely ripping across Bodemakaska. So,
and I'm not sure about on the city chain of lakes, but I'm pretty sure on Lake Minnetonka there are length limits. I believe it's 60 or 70 feet. I have seen some, they're called cigar boats out there that have the loud diesel engines, those guys.
Yeah. Cocaine cowboys?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think there are certain length limits. I can't imagine that's the case on Superior, but probably most folks aren't looking to buy it.
Fun fact, there are 1,000-foot ships on Lake Superior.
Yeah, there you go.
I think that's the biggest ship out there. They're crazy.
I'm not sure about the likes of Red Lake, Leech Lake, Mille Lacs, some of our top 5 largest, Lake of the Woods, but Minnetonka is as big as it gets until you get kind of north of central Minnesota.
Yeah.
And I believe it's 70 feet. I'm not sure about horsepower limits, if there are any.
It's huge.
And that's something that's depending on the amount of rain that we've got and stuff, slow or no wake restrictions, depending on that kind of thing as well, because I believe it's the DNR, but they're trying to constantly manage shoreline erosion.
Yeah. And also, be honest with yourself. Do you want there to be motorized boats in the lake you're on? Yeah. Or do you like the idea of it being peaceful with canoes and kayaks and paddleboards only? Speedboats going across your view is not for everybody. So.
Yeah, we've had some folks that we were helping recently that were looking in the likes of, the Twin Lakes up in, is that Brooklyn Center, technically,
Yeah.
Crystal?
Yeah.
Smaller lakes like that within the cities where these types of things that we're mentioning come into play, certainly. Yeah. I don't know about up in Chisago. Those lakes are pretty large up there.
Pretty recreational.
Forest Lake, pretty good. Same
White
with
Bear
Minnetonka.
Lake, Prior Lake.
Waconia.
Yeah.
Good-sized recreational lakes, kind of the likes of which most people are looking for.
Pining after.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, again, what is the thing that you want? I think that's a very important thing for you to really, really wrap your head around. Do you like the more like party, recreational, yeah.
Can I pull up to a restaurant and have lunch even on some of these?
True.
Yeah,
which
Prior Lake, Charlie's on Prior,
Yeah.
Minnetonka's got multiple, Waconia.
Yeah, speaking of pulling up to stuff, another thing to consider is where you getting your gas, and is that a problem or is that a priority to you? What kind of boat is it? If you have, I always think about this, a smaller lake where there is no marina, there is no way to pull up and fuel. So I guess peeling back the curtain, sometimes some of these bigger lakes, there are marinas, restaurants that also have like gas stations or fueling stations.
On the water.
On the water, right? So you can just pull up to the dock.
No affiliation needed. Hey, I need gas.
Yep. And then, hey.
What's the con to that? Aside from the convenience, gas on the water is very expensive.
Yeah. Like double almost. Maybe not quite, but close to double.
Yeah, you're probably pushing $7 a gallon.
Yeah.
Depending. Yeah. So that's definitely something to consider. So it's a convenience, but it could also be a drawback.
Yeah, but then if you're on a smaller lake where you have a boat, how are you feeling it? And that's something to consider. We should have a tally of those because we've said that a lot. But yeah,
we're under 10.
We can do it. We can make 10. Yeah, I think probably this is a little nitpicky. Most people are like, yeah, that's not the end of the world, but how big is the fuel tank on your boat? Are you keeping it stored on your dock? Then how are you filling it? Do you have a tank of your own on your property? Some of those boathouses might have things like that.
And some of those boats have really large tanks.
Yeah.
Up to 200 gallons, I think I've seen.
That's what I'm saying. So do you want to
5 gallons at a time?
Yeah. That would be very annoying to do. So yeah.
Most of these lakes that you can recreate on, they do have somewhere where you can do it. So I wouldn't sweat it too much, but it's something to consider.
Hey, I hope that's 10. Okay, and then I think last thing to consider, I'm just kidding, is if you're going up north, right? If you're starting to get out in these more rural, Mora, for example, which is 90 minutes north, really probably 60 minutes outside of the metro and north. So that might include a Lindstrom, a Chisago.
Whitefish Chain.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really up there.
Yeah, but anything outside of the metropolitan area where a lot of the lakes are, right? The Brainerd, that whole, there's some Crosby. Those are beautiful areas with tons of lakes. Alexandria. There's a decent chance that those houses are going to be on septic and well. And is that something you're comfortable with? Is that something you are ignorant to? We know what we've learned. I will say, I was a cityite. I have not known about this, and it took me it took me owning one really to understand some of the nuance of that. And it's
additional cost of ownership,
and just additional like concerns. Additional potential headaches.
Compliance standards with resale or even ongoing, depending on this municipality and what they require.
Yeah, because if you have lakefront and a septic, there's a chance that just by law you have to get it checked for compliance every X years or something like that. Almost like a renter's license, because they're like, we don't want your septic system failing and then just ruining the lake that you're sitting on.
Yeah, the groundwater and runoff is taken a lot more into consideration, which we touched on briefly with fertilizer products and stuff like that earlier. But it can be more expensive, and those things may need to be brought to compliance if and when you go to sell. So rural up north, it's a little bit of a different ball game. So there are additional things.
Yeah. One last thought on the lakefront situation is ice fishing. Yeah. A lot of people aren't considering that.
Yeah, there you go.
But you can take, you get a 4-wheeler with some tracks on it, you get a snowmobile, you can just pull your house out onto the lake. Pretty cool. If you're into that.
Yeah, or if you're brave, you can wait until I think there's a foot and you can drive a full-size pickup out there.
Yeah,
I went ice fishing with my cousin on Mille Lacs a couple of years ago, and I had the window open. I was like, there's no way. God forbid, but
yeah. But it's that's a weird thing to do, but it's a distinctly Minnesotan thing, I guess, or further north in Minnesota. Yeah. Probably a pretty Canadian thing to do.
It's just an excuse for Minnesotans to get out and drink beer, let's be honest.
Yeah. But it could be, it could be a great time. My brother doesn't drink and he loves to ice fish, but it's more about the solitude, Yeah.
Typically also, this is kind of a dirt road of sorts, but the further north you get to, if you're really into angling and fishing in general, the lakes up north are going to have a little bit of less pressure from just population in the metro as a whole. I think the DNR does a really good job of stocking the lakes of Lake Minnetonka and stuff like that, but if you're a really avid fisherman, it's just, one more thing.
Yeah, and the lakes off the beaten path often are the most, rocking in terms of fishing. Yeah, there's some crazy fishing here.
Yeah,
I think what's interesting that people don't realize is that it's just potentially more complicated to own waterfront. So if that's something you're interested in, reach out to us. We gotcha. We will help you navigate the process and help you, end up on the lakefront that you want to end up on. info@tothetwincities.com. Attention Nick if you want to work with Nick, or just shoot him an email directly to nick@tothetwincities.com.
Hit me up. Born and raised on the lakes.
Yeah, like this is it. This is the guy. He knows what he's talking about with all this stuff, and we're the hardest working real estate team in the game. If you have a lake house to sell, nobody will show it off like we will. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.